Hey guys, Jay here, and this is my F1 fantasy team for the American Grand Prix. Let's get into it. So first of all, guys, just want to say thank you for the kind messages a few weeks ago when I started having trouble with my ears. I really do appreciate it. Please, for the love of God, do take care of your ears, otherwise you'll end up having to watch your favourite content creators with subtitles, and I can't stress how annoying it really is. So, in terms of Singapore, Team 1, I had McLaren, Red Bull, Piastri as my ×2. I gambled on Sainz and Albon. I had Hadjar and I had Bortoleto. I scored 169 points and I got a 1.1 million budget increase. The transfers I made were Behrman to Sainz, Ferrari to Red Bull. Now, I did think about keeping Behrman because I thought he may have been a dark horse, but I wasn't impressed during practice. So I did go with Sainz. That gave me 2 points. And then I did change Ferrari to Red Bull because I jumped on the Verstappen train, which did give me 3 points. So I got 5 points as my transfer impact. However, I did drop in rank by over 1,500 places. So I need to try and get them back up in COTA, and my options are a bit limited. For Team 2, I got 198 points with a 1.4 million budget rise. This time I had McLaren, Ferrari, Piastri, Russell, Sainz, Hadjar and Gasly, gambling on the 4A build. Transfers were Albon to Russell and Behrman to Gasly, a whopping 25 points plus, so happy about that. And a climb in rank by 1,000 places, almost breaking into the top 10k. Team 3, it was 180 points with a 1.3 million budget rise, and I used Final Fix, which I'll get to in a second. So I had McLaren, Red Bull, Norris as my ×2, Sainz, Albon, Hadjar and Bortoleto, but because it was a low overtaking track and there was talk about rain, I gambled and I final fixed Albon to Antonelli because of his qualifying position. That being said, in terms of transfers, Behrman to Sainz, Ferrari to Red Bull gave me 5. The final fix from Albon to Antonelli cost me a point. So basically my final fix chip was wasted, essentially. There was no gains, I lost a point, and I dropped 300 places. It was a gamble. I knew it was a gamble. Unfortunately, it didn't pay off. According to F1 Fantasy, it's 2 blue arrows and a red arrow, but as you've seen, it's technically 1 blue arrow and 2 red arrows. That being said, I think for me now, I would love to get my Team 1 above my Team 2, but I'm also very happy with how Team 2 is doing, and I'd like to obviously get into that top 10k. Now, in terms of the elite data, the thing I was looking for this time around really was the final fix and mainly wildcard. Final fix was pretty non-existent in the Global 500, 2.2%, but wildcard was 15% in Singapore, and for the Patreon 500, final fix was 2.4%, and it was 12.1% for wildcard. So not a lot of chips were played this past weekend. More interestingly, though, was the drivers. Obviously, it was because of the way free practice went, there was a lot of talk of whether to go from Piastri to Verstappen, that kind of thing. Now, Sainz was actually the top driver picked in the Global 500, followed by Hadjar, and Piastri was the top tier A driver, which does make sense when you think, we've been banging on about, he's your best value for money, points and budget. That being said, 43.2% did go for Verstappen and 42.8% went for Russell. Those two drivers being picked by over a third of teams to come in. Interestingly, Norris is not there. And then in the Patreon 500, again, Sainz was the top pick, followed by Hadjar, Piastri. 38.3% went for Verstappen, 32.1% with Russell, 35.9% went for Gasly, and 30.8% went for Alonso. So some good picks in the Patreon 500. In terms of the constructors, pretty much everyone has McLaren. Most teams either had Mercedes or Ferrari. So in the Global, most teams went with Mercedes. In the Patreon, most teams went with Ferrari. And then Red Bull was only picked by 11.6% in the Global and 11.1% in the Patreon. Now, focusing on COTA early thoughts, I wanted to look at just sprint races. These are the top 8 driver assets for F1 Fantasy this season so far. Piastri leads by 48.3 points on average, followed by Norris on 45, and then it's quite a big gap to Russell on 28. And then Verstappen on 24. Honestly, I'm a bit concerned about Piastri and Norris. Norris because of his price, and Piastri because of possibly confidence with the way things have gone this past weekend. Russell and Verstappen could be good picks for COTA. Not sure about Hamilton personally, and Antonelli could be an outlier. Stroll I'm not interested in, and Tsunoda, it's possible he could be a pick just for a price increase. In terms of the constructors, McLaren obviously lead 104, but it's Red Bull leading in second place with 60.7 points in terms of sprint weekends, followed by Mercedes on 56.7. Ferrari are only on 27 because they had that disqualification in China. So this opens up the picks for constructors and Tier A assets, which is good because it means we'll see teams using different assets potentially, but bad if you don't know what you want to do. What's even more interesting is, even though we've got the rise of Red Bull and Mercedes, Verstappen and Russell, last year it was actually Ferrari that dominated in COTA, with Leclerc picking up 55 fantasy points and Sainz picking up 42 fantasy points. Russell and Verstappen 38 each, Norris and Piastri 30 each. Could we be looking at Red Bull and Mercedes only to get screwed over by Ferrari? Your guess is as good as mine. And as you can see here, in terms of the constructors from COTA last year, it was Ferrari with a whopping 97 points, McLaren second with 80, Red Bull 72, Mercedes with only 33. So what I've decided to do is go onto F1 Fantasy Tools and pick just 12 driver assets. So you've got the 6 A drivers, so Norris, Verstappen, Piastri, Russell, Hamilton, Leclerc. And I've then gone for Antonelli and Tsunoda because they're B drivers with a possible chance of a price increase. Sainz has got the best chance of a price increase, and I've gone for Alonso because he's got a good chance for a price increase, but there is another reason why I like Alonso, which I'll get to at the budget builder. And then I've got Lawson and Gasly. Lawson, a little edgy about Lawson after his crashes in practice in Singapore, and Gasly is just because he's on the price floor and I prefer him over Colapinto. Now, using the weighted average, I've gone through different budgets. So this is a budget of 135 million, and these are the 3 best recommended teams on the weighted average sims on F1 Fantasy Tools. Now, personally, I like Team 1 and Team 3. Team 1 because Alonso is good for a budget increase, not only in COTA but possibly from Mexico. And Team 3 because, going by this, it has a 2 million budget increase. That being said, I'm not against the Team 2 either with Gasly. This is a budget of 132.5 million. For this one, I think for this one I'd go with Team 1 or Team 3 because Tsunoda could be a hit and miss. We've then got 130 million. For me, this would be Team 1, and I wouldn't rule out Team 3 with Alonso's possible price increases both this week and next week, but it's the same for Sainz. So all 3 of these teams for me would be fine. And then 127.5 million builds. I'm not keen on Team 1 with Hamilton, so I'd be looking at Team 2 or 3, I think. But then it's Hamilton versus Tsunoda in that scenario, really. Also, Team 1 doesn't come with Norris or Piastri, so that's something to think about. 125 million. For me, all 3 of these teams are fine. Then for 122.5 million, I'd go with Team 2 or Team 3. And then for 120 million, I'd be looking at Team 1 or Team 3. So that's based on the weighted average sims across the whole season. However, what I then did is focused just on sprint weekends. So just Belgium, Miami, and China. And these were the builds. So for 135 million, I personally like Team 2 just because of their extra slightly increase of budget. But again, it's your pick of Gasly and Lawson and Red Bull or Mercedes. 132.5 million actually is very interesting because it comes with 2 A constructors, an A driver, and then 2 quote-unquote, I guess you can call them A light or AB heavy drivers in terms of Antonelli and Tsunoda. I wouldn't rule out any 3 of these teams. For 130 million, it's got to be team... Again, I think all those teams are fine. 125 million. For me, I'd probably look at Team 3 because of Alonso's potential budget increases over the next 2 races. But again, the same for Sainz though in Team 1. So I'd take Team 1 or Team 3. Then for a 122.5 to 120 million, I would probably go with, again, it's going to be Tsunoda v Antonelli, Red Bull v Mercedes. Right now I'd probably go with Team 2 just because I think I favour Antonelli over Tsunoda. So let's look at the budget builder. In terms of Tier A drivers, we've been banging on about Piastri over the season being best bang for buck, but that being said, he is very, very likely to get a price drop in COTA. Your top 2 picks are actually Russell and Verstappen if you're looking for a price increase as well as points. In terms of the constructors, Mercedes and Red Bull are your favourites for a price increase. It's not impossible for Ferrari or McLaren, but if you're looking just for budget building, it would be Mercedes or Red Bull. In terms of Tier B, it gets interesting. For me, there are 5 assets I'm looking at in Tier B. Sainz, because he can get a DNF and still get a price increase. Alonso, because he can not only get a price increase, but he's carrying 30 points from Singapore after getting his driver of the day. So I do like the look of Alonso. I don't know if the Aston Martin will be strong in COTA, but just for a price rise, I wouldn't rule out Alonso. Lawson has a good chance of a price rise, but he will lose his 17 points from Baku, and then he'll only carry 3 into Mexico. And the other 2 assets I like the look of is Antonelli and Tsunoda. Not for a 0.6 price rise, but for a 0.2. Antonelli only needs 2 points and Tsunoda only needs 7. And given it's a sprint weekend, more points are available and on the table. The trouble is Antonelli is over 15 million. He's currently 15.1 million and Tsunoda is 9.6 million. So it depends on your budget. Otherwise, I'd be looking at Gasly just as a price floor asset to protect your budget. And Behrman, I don't think I can rule out Behrman just because, again, more points are on table and it's 6 and 6 out of the last 2 races. Although the only thing, and this is what you do need to consider, going into Mexico, as things stand, the only drivers that will have double-digit points going into Mexico are Alonso, Antonelli, and Stroll. Obviously, it depends on what the drivers score at COTA, but right now, they're the only assets that have got that double digit from Singapore to carry into Mexico. In terms of the Tier B constructors, your favourite for a price rise is Racing Bulls. Aston Martin only need 9 points for a 0.6. Williams need 14. It's not out of the realm possibility, but really you should be running to A tier constructors now. In terms of chips, I usually do this after my team selection, but I'm going to do it before, I think, this video. Limitless for me is a question mark. The Delta has shown over the season that Limitless is stronger in a non-sprint weekend, but there are more points available on a sprint weekend. So it's a case of see how practice goes, see how sprint quali goes, and then make a decision. Because the other thing is, the longer you leave it, the more you lose it. Wildcard is definitely an option because you should be looking to get into that 4A build now, especially with a sprint weekend, more points on offer. Final fix is always an option, especially because we should start seeing some grid penalties now for new engines, things like that. Don't know of any right now at the time of recording, but it is always an option. Autopilot is definitely an option for sprint weekends because you want whatever asset gets the most points. Again, sprint weekend, most points are available. And times 3 is definitely an option. Times 3 is probably the most favoured chip for this weekend for the COTA. No negative, I've put a cross on it. The reason I've put a no to no negative is because I think there are other races that are going to be more viable for no negative, and I'm thinking along the lines of Brazil and Las Vegas. So where does that leave me for my team selections? Well, for Team 1, I am looking to get rid of Albon, but as you can see, that does not give me enough to get up to a Leclerc or a Russell. The highest I can get to is Antonelli. So it would come down to I just make one transfer and go for budget. Bring in Alonso, carry a transfer into Mexico, but it means I'm not running a 4A build, which I don't like. So I've got a choice to make. I can drop Piastri, and then I can go for Verstappen and Antonelli, which again, it's not a 4A build, so not really an option. So I'd probably be looking at something like Russell and Leclerc. Otherwise, I'm going to have to drop Red Bull, sorry. Go for someone like a Mercedes, and then I can bring in Russell, or I can bring in Leclerc. I can't, unfortunately, get to Verstappen unless I take a 10-point penalty, transfer penalty, which I'm not willing to do because I've already made 3 this season. So at the moment, everything considered, I'd probably do something like this. Piastri and Russell with McLaren and Mercedes. I don't think I can get to Ferrari. No, I can't get to Ferrari. So, yeah, that's probably going to be what I'm looking at for Team 1. For Team 2, I have the most budget. Now, and you see I've got Russell and I've got Piastri. So I could just simply drop Piastri. And then I can go to like Leclerc, have double Ferrari. Or if I don't like the look of that, I could drop Ferrari, go Red Bull. Can I get Max? I can't get Max, so I could do something like that. Or I could keep Piastri and just drop Ferrari to Red Bull. Or I can do a double Red Bull, Verstappen with Red Bull and Russell. But that'll be all my budget. Or I could go Mercedes, and then I could do Verstappen, Leclerc, or I could do, again, Russell, Verstappen. I could do Piastri, Russell, Mercedes. Can't get to Verstappen. So right now, I wouldn't rule out this. I would not rule out Verstappen, Russell, and Red Bull, but it would be all my budget. HAAS is likely to drop in budget, I believe. So it really would be going for the points. For Team 3, I've got a problem, and that's Lando Norris. He's too expensive. So Albon would be out. Now I can do 2 things. I could drop Red Bull and go for a triple McLaren build with Racing Bulls, or even with Williams. But I think, if I just refresh this, it would be Albon and Norris out. Now, if I go Piastri, I can only get down to Antonelli. If I go Max, it's the same thing. So, I could go Russell Leclerc. I could take a hit on Antonelli, go for a double Mercedes if Antonelli looks good, but I'd probably more waive it to Leclerc. Otherwise, it's going to be a 10-point hit to lower my constructor to, say, Mercedes. And then I can do Piastri, Leclerc. Or I can do Russell, Leclerc. Or I can do Russell, Piastri. I just can't get to Verstappen, even though I've got that budget. Because I have Hadjar and Bortoleto, and I'm not willing to make 4 transfers. It's a bit of a hard one because I can't get Alonso, and I would really like Alonso for the budget, but I also need the points. So that's where I'm at with my team selection. Now, if you're here in the UK, practice 1 is on the 17th of October at 6:30 p.m. with sprint qualifying at 10:30. Remember, you don't need to lock in your teams until after sprint qualifying for a sprint weekend. And then the sprint race on the Saturday, 18th of October, is at 6 p.m. with qualifying at 10 p.m. And then the race on Sunday, the 19th of October at 8 p.m. At the time of recording, it should be warm weather, which could favour Ferrari, to be fair. But it should be warm weather on the Friday and the Saturday, 33 degrees. And then on the Sunday, 32 degrees, remaining warm with sunny spells. But bear in mind, I am recording this just over a week, about a week and a half before the race weekend. So in terms of the top 12 driver assets at COTA last year, and we've hit on this earlier on, top 6 were Leclerc and Sainz, the 2 Ferrari drivers, followed by Russell, Verstappen, Norris and Piastri. And the bottom 6 were Lawson, Perez, Hulkenberg, Alonso, Ocon and Kevin Magnussen. So in case you missed it, guys, there's a lot that's been happening over the last few weeks, so I'll try and get through this as quickly as I can. The first thing is Roman Grosjean returned behind the wheel of an F1 car for HAAS over in Mugello. He had a special test session the other week. Obviously, Grosjean had that horrible crash back in 2020. He then went on to IndyCar, I believe. In terms of F1 Academy, Hello Kitty is taking over for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. I believe it's the last Grand Prix of the season for F1 Academy. This was on F1.com. F1 Academy has today announced a collaboration with Hello Kitty as the series prepares for a show-stopping season finale on the streets of Las Vegas at the Formula One Heineken Las Vegas Grand Prix on November 20th to 22nd. So if you're at the Grand Prix in Vegas, be warned, you're probably going to see a lot of Hello Kitty merch and advertisements. Sadly, we said goodbye to Roscoe Hamilton, who was Hamilton's beloved pet dog and best friend. Rest in peace, Roscoe. Alex Dunne has left the McLaren Junior program. I believe he's gone to the Red Bull Junior program. As a McLaren fan, this was a bit gutting, but understandable. Obviously, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris have got long-term contracts with McLaren, and there's opportunities becoming available over in the Red Bull family, both at Red Bull and Racing Bulls. Obviously, Max Verstappen's seat is confirmed, but we still don't know about Yuki Tsunoda, Isaac Hadjar, and Liam Lawson. This was a few weeks ago. It was reported that on BBC Sport that Christian Horner had been ringing around to try and get back into F1. Christian Horner obviously was relieved of his duties earlier in the season at Red Bull and then received a $52 million payout over the summer. However, it was reported by Aston Martin Chief Executive Officer Andy Cowell that it looks as though Christian is ringing up pretty much every team owner at the moment. I can clearly say there are no plans for the involvement of Christian in an operational or investment role in the future. It was also reported by Io Komatsu, the team principal of HAAS, that Horner had approached the US-based team but added nothing has gone any further, it is finished. George Russell, winning the Singapore Grand Prix this past weekend, he decided to reenact Lewis Hamilton's pose from 2018. And McLaren, as you know, are 10-time World Constructors champions. However, it has not gone down well, especially with Oscar Piastri fans, who some have even called for Oscar to consider leaving McLaren due to what they believe is him being screwed over, essentially. In other motorsport news, Porsche are terminating their hypercar program in the World Endurance Championship. I believe this is due to financial reasons and they want to focus more on Formula E and the IMSA. I've only been following the World Endurance Championship since the start of this year, and it's a bit sad because Porsche are currently second in the Hypercar Manufacturers Championship. They are 39 points behind Ferrari with one round to go, that being the 8 hours of Bahrain in November, which you can check out it on the FIA World Endurance Championship YouTube channel. They usually release highlights and full race replays within a week or so after the event. Otherwise, if you want to watch the event live, you'll have to watch it on the World Endurance Championship app. You'll need to buy a day pass, which I think is about £7 or £8 here in the UK. I bought one back in summer for Brazil, or a season pass. We're coming to the end of the F1 season, but that's not all. Other championships are finishing up over the next few weeks, starting with the GT World Challenge Europe Endurance category. It is the final race of the season in Barcelona. The main sessions are qualifying and the main race on Sunday, the 12th of October, so this weekend. Now, if you're new to the GT World Challenge, essentially it's a global manufacturers competition across 4 continents, that being Europe, America, Asia and Australia. I focus on Europe because I'm in the UK, and I focus on the team championships. So there's 4 classes. Overall, it's the AMG Manfilter Mercedes team that are currently leading the Rotronic Porsche team by just 4 points. We've then got the Gold Cup class with Verstappen.com Racing Aston Martin team leading the championship. Now, I thought they'd already won the championship back at the Nurburgring about a month ago. It was a 3-hour race, that was my understanding. But going by this, they're only 12 points ahead, so I could be wrong. Either way, they are leading the championship ahead of the BMW Team WR team. In the silver class, it's the Century Motorsport BMW team, well ahead of the Boots and VDST team. And in the bronze class, it's the Kessel Racing Ferrari team, way ahead of the bronze Manfilter AMG team. Essentially, you have a massive GT3 grid across 4 classes. So overall is your platinum drivers, which are the highest ranked drivers. They got the highest license, and then down to bronze, which are the lowest licensed drivers, usually like youngsters, amateurs, that kind of thing. At least that's my understanding. So 4 races in one big race over a couple of hours. And you can catch all the action on the GT World YouTube channel, including practice qualifying, and they should be showing the race. They usually do. However, it's not on there just yet. and there's some onboards as well. Finally, you would have seen Max Verstappen compete in a GT3 Ferrari at the Nurburgring in the Nurburgring series a few weeks ago. It is the finale of the Nurburgring series this weekend. It's race 10, the season finale. Now, at the time of this recording, as far as I'm aware, Max Verstappen is not competing this weekend. However, if you enjoyed watching that race, if you want to see a whole range of cars competing across different classes, GT3s, GT4s, touring cars, road cars built for racing, then this is for you. I don't know how long the race is. It's usually about 4 hours, but this will be this Sunday on the Auto Addiction channel and usually the official Nürburgring channel. Finally, guys, I forgot about GridRivals. I had Sainz, Piastri, Behrman, Hadjar, Colapinto, McLaren, 909 points and a £3 million price rise after losing 4 million in Baku. Also, my rank has gone up to 10,956. And that is it from me for this video, guys. Sorry it's been a while. Obviously, I couldn't record because of my ears. Hopefully, we'll get back on it and we can get back into the rhythm. As always, thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. And I will speak to you real soon to discuss our plans for the Mexican Grand Prix. All the best. Bye.